Oh, good morning, this is Miss Fricker's class. My name is Jean Wright, and I used to work on the space shuttle. I worked on the last 3 shuttles, so I was the very last one they hired at the thermal protection facility, which is the building that I worked at. I was a seamstress, which might surprise a lot of you that we actually had hand sewing that we did on the shuttle. But the first thing I'm going to show you this morning is some of the blankets that we have that cover the shuttle. I have a little piece right here. These are called fibs, or fibrous insulated blankets. This is quartz fabric on the outside, stitched in a quartz thread, yes, from the stone. And the back of it is fiberglass. The inside is filled with a cotton material called Q felt. But I'm bringing you over here because there's something special I want to show you. Over here on the shuttle, we actually have a patch up here, right there, that I think adds a little homey touch to her, because most of these blankets have flown on her since the very beginning. From October 3rd of 1985 was Atlantis' first flight, and 80% of these blankets are the original blankets on her. We coat them with a ceramic paint called C9 that makes them sound very hard when they fly. But we have over 2,400 of those blankets that we make. And even though we have a machine that quilts 30 rows of stitches at a time, every single one of them is finished off by hand, just like this. Okay, that's it for this part. Okay, I don't know what you need to do.
Keep going, I'll just follow you.
Oh, okay. Alrighty, let me come down here. Okay. Are you still rolling?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to talk about some of the special materials that we used on the shuttle. This right here, the gray, is called reinforced carbon-carbon. We have 22 panels on each leading edge of the wing. So wherever you see gray, which is in the nose and also on the leading edge, that fabric takes over 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit in heat. Now, when we lost Columbia, it was panel number 8 that was hit with the external tank foam. Panel number 8 is that panel right there, and that's about where the hole was that got knocked into her wing that brought her down about 19 minutes before she was to land that morning, which was February 1st, 2003. Here we go. Now here's another interesting little item that I have. This is a piece of felt called frizzy, or flexible reusable surface insulation. This is a silicone elastomer coat, and it's a Nomex felt that we have on the back. We use a lot of this for firefighting equipment and for NASCAR, but it's all this whole area here where we affectionately call the NASA meatball up here, and it also is the same fabric that coats the top of the cargo bay doors. This little piece of felt, as thin as it is, can protect to over 700 degrees. What else am I showing? Okay, let me put that right there. Okay.
Most of them you never heard of, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm walking too fast. Now these articles right here, these are called thrusters, and this is how they start off. We hand sew these, and so what we'll do is we'll paint RTV around the bottom, and we'll put it in a reverse mold, and it will dry for 3 days. So these all start off as fabric, and the reason why these look charcoal gray inside, we actually have a gray paint that we call a mittens coating that we paint on each of these, and we'll bake it in the oven, and we jokingly refer to that as our Pillsbury certification because it's baked. So we have 44 of those on shuttle. These are relatively small. We have bigger ones that we have, but those help guide the shuttle in due direction. So whenever they need course adjustments, or if they need to slow down and get in line up for reentry, those are the thrusters that we'll use for that. Oh, let me show you that one. Now I've got a special blanket here. Hey, grab that. Here we go. This blanket is made for the shuttle, and we have an arrow because every blanket that we made points towards the nose, and you might notice this number here. That's the part ID. We had 2.5 million shuttle parts, and every single one of them had to be ID'd, either with ink or aluminum tape or even paint. So this blanket, if we were to install it, is this one right here. Grab it right. there. It's that one right here. So you can see how it'd be installed. It's just like that. But this is where that one goes. Right there. Here we go. But I'm going to show you something really, really neat. We have really big blankets that we make for the shuttle, and the way we install them is pretty unique, but I'm going to show you back here. These are called dome heat shield blankets. And the reason why we have those is it's against sound suppression from the engines, because you can imagine it gets pretty loud back there on a launch. These take us 4.5 days to make, just a half of one, because it takes us a day just to stack all the fabrics and baste them all together, and then we're standing at a giant quilting machine that we affectionately call Lurch. All of our machines have names, but Lurch helps us quilt that. We have 12 rows that way, 124 that way. Every one of them has to be knotted and buried into the part, and we hand sew that part on and that part on. But what makes it so unique about this blanket is how we install it onto the back of the shuttle. It'll probably surprise you if I tell you we hand sew that onto the back of the shuttle. Probably wondering how we do that, and I'm going to show you how. This last row of tile that we have here has about a 3/4 inch piece of stainless steel on top. And so what we'll do is it has little holes about every 1/8 of an inch. So we hand sew that blanket on with stainless steel thread. Now these will fly about 3 times before we have to replace them, but you can imagine how big they are. It takes us a while to do, about 4.5 days, so we were always making these. Now this little blanket here is called a splice pillow blanket. That one would take about 8 hours to do. These are all done by hand. And so what that does is it joins both the blankets together, which is why we call it splice pillow, because it splices the 2 blankets together.
And Jean, all these blankets that were on here have flown in space on this
Yes, yes it is. In fact, we have, and I'm going to come back here, let me show you something real quick. We had to make some special blankets or brand new blankets for the orbiter. Right here, you see these blankets here on how nice and white they are. We had to make those blankets specially for the exhibit. A lot of people, when I ask, what do you think came out of there, and they have to guess, we actually had the parachutes that would come out of there. But because they're blown off literally with pyrotechnic explosives, it blows the blankets all apart. So we had to make brand new ones for the exhibit. But one thing that made us happy, for those of us that worked at the TPSF, on our very last landing, the crew actually picked up the pieces of the blankets for us and put it in a shadow box frame. So we have that as kind of a little memorial to our blankets that's on the wall at the TPSF. And that stands for Thermal Protection Systems Facility, where I worked at.
And some of the dust that you see there, is that space dust that's on?
Yes, it is. In fact, some of the dark charring that you see, some of that is re-entry burns on the blankets. Some of that is the ink from the ID, but that's a good example of re-entry burn right there. You see how it's darker right there. And you'll notice some of the blankets are lighter than others, which means they have flown less than the other ones. But as I mentioned earlier, 80% of these blankets are the original ones from 1985 when we flew. And we took off over 7,000 white tile and put the white blankets on there, and saved us over 7,000 pounds of weight and a lot of money. As you can imagine, our tiles on there, even though they could take over 2,000 degrees, actually probably about 2,300 to 2,700, they're mainly out of sand and air and very fragile, but we could put the fabric up here, and it was pretty tough stuff and saved us a lot of weight and money when we converted to the fabric blankets.
Awesome. Thank you, Jean.
You want to tell them about QR codes?
Oh, what I learned here, the QR codes that you guys use for your grading of your papers were created for NASA to keep track of all the parts, the 2.5 million parts that were on the space shuttle. They ran out of barcodes, so they had to switch to the QR codes, and so they created that. Bye, guys.